A ticking time bomb for future pandemics. That's how some experts describe our current system of industrial animal agriculture. And they're not exaggerating. Imagine billions of stressed chickens cramped in long, windowless sheds. Or thousands of pigs jostling around in densely packed pens. Every creature a potential host for a new virus. This is not a sci-fi horror story. It's the reality behind the cheap meat we see in grocery stores. And today, we are digging deep into why that reality could be our undoing. What is really going on in these factory farms? How does it tie directly to the possibility of the next pandemic touching every corner of our planet? And, most crucially, do we have any genuine alternative that can break us out of this cycle? In this sweeping exploration, we will uncover the hidden forces at play, the staggering global demand for animal protein, the rapid mutations of influenza viruses in birds and pigs, and the domino effect of antibiotic overuse. Plus, we will spotlight the controversial question: are we on the brink of a global health crisis that might make previous pandemics look manageable by comparison? By the end, you will understand exactly how our appetite for meat could be fueling the next lethal outbreak, and the surprising new technologies that may just save us from ourselves. During the 14th century, the Black Death decimated entire populations across Europe and reshaped history. That catastrophic pandemic was fed by a transmission chain from fleas that lived on rats to human communities. Fast forward to more recent history, and you see the same pattern repeated. Ebola, HIV, and the virus responsible for COVID-19 all originated in animals before carving deadly paths through humanity. But as we have moved from small-scale farming to massive industrial operations, the danger of so-called zoonotic spillover has multiplied. When an infectious agent emerges in the cramped environment of a farm teeming with thousands or tens of thousands of animals, it can mutate at lightning speed. The result? A potent new pathogen capable of hopping to humans and racing around the globe in the blink of an eye. You may be wondering, how exactly do these viruses and bacteria make the jump? The routes vary. Some are passed through direct contact, a bite or scratch from an infected animal, while others stealthily invade the food chain, as with contaminated meat or dairy products. Meanwhile, insect vectors like mosquitoes and ticks can become unintentional couriers, transferring diseases from livestock to humans. And let's not forget the setting of a busy wet market brimming with live animals of all kinds. Any one of these pathways can serve as the perfect gateway for an infection to leap into our communities. When the viral or bacterial culprit is given the ideal conditions, tightly packed animals, weakened immune systems, and minimal genetic diversity, it can flourish, adapt, and slip past the species barrier. That scenario becomes downright terrifying when we consider just how easily a virus like avian influenza can spread among birds in close quarters. Picture high-density poultry houses where each bird is stressed, their immune systems compromised from poor living conditions. In that toxic mix, an influenza strain can gather steam, pick up new genetic tricks, and turn into a supercharged threat. Scientists have already tracked certain variants jumping from birds to mammals, pigs, sheep, and occasionally humans. One unsettling development saw avian flu appear in sheep, stirring concern among epidemiologists about the virus's seemingly boundless adaptability. This unpredictability is precisely why the next big health catastrophe may already be percolating in a place few of us ever see. Yet it isn't just viruses. The widespread use of antibiotics in industrial farming has sparked another colossal danger: antimicrobial resistance. Overuse of antibiotics to promote faster growth and to suppress illness in tightly confined animals can create bacteria that are resistant to multiple types of medication. These superbugs can then travel through contaminated food, farm runoff, or even wind-blown dust. Picture a day when standard treatments for common infections no longer work because bacteria have evolved armor against our best weapons. The World Health Organization has, for years, sounded the alarm that antibiotic resistance could mushroom into one of the greatest threats to human survival in modern times. If that day arrives, it would render many of our routine medical procedures, like surgery or chemotherapy, unacceptably risky. It's not as though we lack examples that should keep us on high alert. The HIV/AIDS epidemic, originating from non-human primates, claimed the lives of over 40 million people by steadily creeping across populations since the 20th century. In 2009, the H1N1 swine flu burst onto the scene, quickly circling the globe with roots traced back to intensive pig operations. And let us pay attention to avian influenza, which repeatedly threatens to morph into forms that could pass easily between humans. One of the highly pathogenic strains, H5N1, cause sporadic human infections with an unsettlingly high fatality rate of over 50%, again, spelled out over 50%. We got lucky it did not adapt well to human transmission, but no one can guarantee we'll remain so fortunate forever. If this detail concerns you, consider giving this video a thumbs up. It helps us gauge your interest in this crucial topic. Meanwhile, our demand for animal protein escalates year after year. Humanity collectively consumes hundreds of millions of metric tons of meat annually, and that number is predicted to surge by well over 70% by the midpoint of this century. Visualize that for a moment. Countless farm animals constantly pulled into the vortex of factory farming, each one a potential reservoir for the next lethal pathogen or antibiotic-resistant bacteria, forcing our medical systems to scramble. As climate pressures intensify, as farmland becomes scarcer, and as population centers swell, the conditions that allow viruses and bacteria to flourish in industrial farms could likewise intensify. The cyclical nature of supply and demand means ramping up animal production. Yet that augmentation only heightens the risks embedded in confined, stressed populations. But are we truly doomed to accept industrial animal farming as our only path? Visionaries in the food tech sector argue that this grim fate can be avoided. They propose reimagining our protein sources through such innovations as precision fermentation and cultivated meats. For instance, precision fermentation harnesses finely tuned microbes to generate animal-identical proteins like casein or whey without requiring cows. Imagine a future where your milk or cheese is designed in a facility that meticulously controls contamination risks, bypassing all the messy realities of feedlots, manure lagoons, and antibiotic-laced feed. This technology ostensibly slashes greenhouse gas emissions, water usage, and deforestation, all while removing the likelihood of viral or bacterial outbreaks among massive herds. Cultivated meat, the idea of growing genuine animal cells in sterile bioreactors, could be the next leap forward. With no live animals to suffer cramped conditions, there is less chance for disease to sprout and spread. Proponents argue that if we can master large-scale production, we could see an incredible shift in global protein provision, one that cuts the tether tying our diet to reckless risk and cruelty. An executive who spent decades in the conventional meat industry recently jumped ship to a cultivated meat venture, championing the notion that lab-grown products might be the only real solution to the looming crisis. At present, the costs of cultivated meats are sky high, but steady improvements in technology and investment suggest that someday these products will become price competitive. Government regulators in Singapore have already granted approvals, and nations like the United States, Israel, and the United Kingdom are stepping in behind them. If successful, this shift might become a watershed moment, not just for our health, but for the environment and animal welfare too. Still, the road to mainstream acceptance of alternative proteins is bumpy. Skeptics question the feasibility of scaling these projects to feed billions. Others find the concept of lab-grown food unappealing or downright eerie. Food culture, after all, is profoundly emotional. It's about tradition, taste, and familiarity. Convincing entire populations to embrace a new category of food that emerged from an industrial tank rather than a barnyard is challenging. Even governments are unsure how to regulate these products, grappling with standards for labeling, distribution, and food safety. But as concerns about pandemics, climate change, and animal welfare converge, the impetus to adapt may become unstoppable. We should also recall the economic toll. When infectious diseases strike, they can decimate entire sections of the animal population, leading to mass culls and catastrophic losses. In certain instances of bird flu, farmers were forced to euthanize as much as 8% of the national hen population in an effort to contain the disease. The ripple effects, egg shortages, rising grocery bills, and the heartbreak of seeing millions of fully sentient creatures deliberately terminated lay bare how industrial farming's vulnerabilities can quickly impact us all. In an interconnected era, everything is linked. The cost of your family's breakfast can hinge on a virus that mutates in a cramped facility halfway across the world. The deeper one delves into the research, the clearer it becomes that ignoring these warning signs is a dangerous gamble. Philip Limberry, who leads a major campaign group focusing on compassionate farming, warns that factory farms are like tinderboxes for new pathogens. Dr. Michael Greger, an outspoken physician, has spent years cautioning that bird flu might one day unleash massive havoc on human health if it becomes efficiently transmissible between people. And Dr. Rob Wallace, an evolutionary biologist and author of Big Farms Make Big Flu, methodically illustrates how large-scale agriculture intensifies viral evolution. These voices, often sounding alarms from the fringes, are gradually moving into mainstream discourse as the evidence of our global vulnerability piles up. So, where do we go from here? Some activists call for immediate legislative reforms to phase out the worst practices of factory farms, such as banning the use of antibiotics purely for growth promotion, enforcing strict standards on stocking density, and investing in robust surveillance systems for early detection of emerging pathogens. Others believe consumer behavior can drive change if enough people shift toward verified humane or organic meat, or if they drastically reduce their overall animal product consumption. But the numbers are daunting, and many worry that incremental steps won't be fast or profound enough to avert a crisis. Adding to the complexity is the fact that this is a multifaceted dilemma. The greenhouse gases and pollution generated by industrial farms also stoke climate disruptions, which in turn bring new disease vectors or push wildlife into closer contact with livestock. For instance, deforestation for feed crops can drive wild creatures into agricultural zones, offering novel gateways for pathogens to cross from exotic species to domesticated animals, and eventually to humans. Every link in this chain amplifies the risks that scientists dread. The question becomes whether we are collectively willing or able to break it before it snaps back and unleashes havoc. Yet there is cause for some optimism, provided we act soon. New lines of research explore how to fortify animal welfare, reduce stress in farm conditions, and minimize contact between creatures with different immune systems. But perhaps the grandest hope rests on alternatives that bypass the problem altogether. If we decouple our protein supply from the intensification of farm animals, then the main breeding ground for future pandemics might dwindle. Sure, it will require rethinking entire supply chains, training new workforces, and persuading shoppers to trust technology-assisted meals. But as the global population continues climbing, sticking to the status quo will only push us closer to the edge. Can you imagine a day when a new virus emerges in a country halfway around the world, but has no factory farm environment to supercharge its spread, no antibiotic-laden barn to power its mutations, no stressed immune systems to let it run rampant? That might sound fantastical, but as more science-based solutions gain traction, it becomes real. If this resonates with you, and you'd like to see more in-depth coverage of these pressing issues, consider subscribing so you never miss a future exploration of how our food system intersects with health and sustainability. As we near the end of this journey, let's remember that reforming our food system is inextricably tied to pandemic prevention. We have historical precedents that show how devastating zoonotic diseases can be, and we live in an age when infections can travel between continents in a matter of hours. Industrial animal agriculture is not the only culprit, but it often serves as the perfect crucible for viruses and bacteria to morph into formidable adversaries. By embracing innovative technologies in food production, strengthening regulations around antibiotic usage, and fostering an informed community of consumers, we stand a better chance of averting the next global health meltdown. If we seize this moment to transform our system, maybe we can spare future generations from reading about how one more pandemic changed everything. With so many potential threats converging, we truly are at a crossroads. The decisions we make now, whether to support alternative proteins, lobby for stricter farm regulations, or continue as though nothing is wrong, will shape the health and stability of generations to come. The stakes could not be higher, but crisis has a way of fueling innovation and collaboration. If our species pulls together to address this threat at its root, we might avert another global catastrophe while redefining how we eat,